AC/DC and Kiss, two gigantic mega band, mega famous, sold millions and millions of records. And they gave me quite a headache because initially I had the idea knocking around in my head with these two bands that I mentioned with another two. And the other two were Rush and ZZ Top. And I wanted to do too many things. So it would have been cool to contrast Rush with Kiss or Rush with AC/DC. And then on the other hand, AC/DC and ZZ Top are so similar. So there was no perfect cut and dry way to slice and dice it. But I eventually decided on going with AC/DC and Kiss this time and bring you Rush and ZZ Top the next time. 1973 or 4, we have Gene and Paul recruiting Ace and eventually Chris to found the band that eventually would become Kiss. And they were first called Wicked Lester. There might have been some other band members, but be it as it may, they finally landed a record deal and came out with their first record, Kiss, which we know with the famous makeup, which they said that it just came up as a part of a practical joke. Someone said, oh, let's go get makeup, and they started to experiment with it in the bathroom and put it on themselves or on one another and came up with that. And it ended up working out for them. So the first record, in my opinion, is pretty impressive. Not in the sense that it's something amazing or incredible or on the level of Jethro Tull or King Crimson, anything like this, but just sweet, cool, cute, entertaining, good rock, hard rock music. And I like this record ever since I heard it. It wasn't my first Kiss record. And of course, this is a long laundry list of famous songs. You got Firehouse, Cold Gin, Nothing to Lose, Kissin' Time, Deuce, 100,000 Years, a bunch of real famous songs, Black Diamond. Nice sound, nothing super special, but I think that this laid down the foundation to what Kiss was, or Kiss would become, or in fact became with the first record. So they kind of nailed it. And it looks like even if they didn't know for sure that this was their direction where they went, but this is definitely a foundational album. Next up is Hotter Than Hell, and I'll tell you right off the bat, this is my all-time favorite Kiss record. This is a very good record, even though for me Kiss is a second or maybe even third tier in terms of favorites, of how much I'm obsessed. Obviously, it's a far cry from Snowy White and Gary Moore and Peter Green, Purple Sabbath, Priest Maiden, Tool, Crimson, these kind of things. But it's still a good band. You know, as a teenager, I saw these record covers and the makeup and all of that. So that kind of brought me in. And I think one of the first records I got was one of their live albums, which was pretty good. But this is definitely an absolute banger of a record, again, in that kind of expectation. Let's just say that kind of rock. All of the songs here are really good. Going Blind is a big one. Parasite, probably my favorite off of the record. Let Me Go Rock and Roll, Watching You, great song. Coming Home, Strange Ways, Mainline. Every single song, they made it good. They played good on the record. Even with Peter Criss, who was not much of a drummer, so I don't really understand from the get-go why they went with him. But I guess he was able to more or less keep himself together, and they had no one else. Otherwise, I see no reason why they went with him. Ace is a different story, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But we're going to go with the next one, Dress to Kill, which in my opinion was here a little bit of a step down. Definitely from Hotter Than Hell, but also from the first one, from Kiss. It was a little bit too polished, tried to be a little bit too trendy to some extent. So they lost a little bit of that grit, that edge, that immediateness that makes a a very good record and came up with something that, in my opinion, is a little bit more flatter. Not terrible, worth a listen here and there. It got a couple good tracks on it. Rock and Roll All Night, most famously, but Getaway, Rock Bottom's not bad at all. Come On and Love Me is a good one. So it's a pretty listenable record. Not on the top 10 or the top 5 of the band, but it's okay. I think they lost a little bit something in their sound. They should have continued with the direction that they were going with Hotter Than Hell. So had they continued that way, I think they would have been better off. What I imagined as a teenager, as someone with limited access to information, and definitely before the internet era, even though no one told me this, but just by imagination in the back of my head, I always imagined that Kiss was an overnight success, that they banged out their first record, went on stage and became the super mega stars that they are today. But in fact, today most people know that that's not the case. They were in fact on the brink of bankruptcy, they and the record label. So the first records didn't sell shit, even though the concerts were going good. And then finally someone put two and two together. I forget who exactly that was, their manager or someone from the label. And they said, why don't you record a live album? And that will showcase, in a way, what you are on stage. Of course, there were accusations of overdubs and polishing and cleaning it up here, especially some guitar parts and vocals. And the band was pretty open about it. I don't remember when they first openly admitted it, but it wasn't like a major secret. So apparently Unleashed in the Studio is not the only offender or Live and Dangerous, right, by Thin Lizzy. And they were pretty open it, and I kind of can see the logic in it, obviously. So Paul Stanley said, who wants to hear a mistake over and over again? And so they said that it didn't do to deceive anybody, but be it as it may, Alive 1, which was just called Kiss Alive, very, very good live record. Obviously not on the level of Unleashed in the East or Made in Japan, but a good live, or corrected live, little airbrushed live, let's just call it. A good live record. And it has all of the important songs that you would imagine. Again, they only had 3 records and they put out a double album, so there were little to leave out, but they put up quite a decent number from Hotter Than Hell. Again, for my taste, they could have fit another 1 or 2, and they got Cold Gin, and of course the songs that they had from Dress to Kill, they were kind of fixed or revamped or played a little bit harder with a harder edge. So if those who love those songs from Cold Gin would definitely enjoy them better on Alive 1. And so now let's take a flight across the whatever ocean is between the United States and Australia. I think it's the Pacific Ocean, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look it up later on. But I'm pretty sure that there's a Pacific Ocean. Although if you go in the other way around, you can go around the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, and maybe that's how they did it. But in Australia, there were a group of 5 people who wanted to audition to Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. And they didn't get the gig because they were only 5, and they needed 7 of them. So they said, heck, let's make a heavy metal band instead. Oh, oops, rock band, rock and roll band. Motorhead and AC/DC don't let you to say that it's heavy metal. Indeed, the first couple definitely didn't really fit the mold, although back at the time the term, I think, didn't really exist. So they came up with High Voltage, and not a super impressive record, but not bad either. A little juvenile, a little underripe, let's just say. The opener is definitely the best song off of the record, one of AC/DC song that I love a lot, Baby Please Don't Go. This is a Delta blues, or a kind of later Delta between the Delta and the Chicago blues, which was popularized by Big Joe Williams. Some people say that he authored it, some people say that was already around before him, but he definitely popularized them. And then after him, Muddy Waters my favorite version is that of Budgie. Check it out. It's on Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Also the opening. Maybe that's where, I mean, I doubt it. How would have the kids in ACDC hear about Budgie? But maybe they did see a Budgie in the record store. But anyway, Budgie's version is two hands down better. And the first ACDC record, kind of like Kiss actually, that's one parallel there. They, at least in principle, they got the idea of what they wanted to do, what they wanted to sound like, how they wanted to present their music. It was a little lackluster, like I said, a little underripe, a little juvenile. There isn't any like wow, amazing, great surprise here. Before I go any further, I want to mention to you that when I was a kid, or maybe not so much of a kid, I already had some money of my own, but I saw a box set in the record store with all of AC/DC's records up to Highway to Hell. That was the original Australian release. And all of however many records, that's 5 or 6, so all of them from the beginning. So in Australia, there's a little bit different order than what's known internationally. I think that High Voltage and TNT were released first in Australia only, and then Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap was released internationally, and then they also released an international version of High Voltage and TNT with a slightly different songs and definitely different album covers. So I'm going to go by what I had as a kid, which is the original AC/DC releases, and also chronologically it makes a little bit more sense. So next up, I think High Voltage, the original High Voltage was released in 75 maybe, and then TNT also either in the same year or in the second year. It shows an improvement over it, not like a huge by a country mile, but kind of a maturing band. Better songwriting. They revamped their playing abilities. I think that Phil Rudd appears here for the first time, or maybe in the next record, but you hear it in the song's a little bit better worked out and executed. Starts off with It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. I think they still play it today. Not a bad number at all. The Jack is kind of boring. I never liked that song. I love Live Wire. Can I Sit Next to You, Girl is a good one. They put High Voltage again here, and School Days, which is a Chuck Berry cover, not bad at all. All in all, quite a listenable record. Nothing amazing, not something you would listen to every day, but a cool snapshot into what the band was back at the time. The sound changed a little bit toward what it would become known for. And of course, as you would expect, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap is another step in that direction. And this is a notable album because it has a lot of well-known songs. This Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, which is talking about an assassin waiting at home on the telephone, waiting for giving a phone call, which became quite prophetic much later. Ain't No Fun, Ride On, Jailbreak, Squealer, there's gonna be some Rockin' Problem Child. So quite a few notorious songs here. The song becoming a little harder, a little edgier. Bon Scott's voice is, I think, in this record becomes what it kind of became really known for. And of course, their fiery performances, dancing and prancing around the stage with the young brothers, like two little midgets running around and taking Bon Scott on his shoulders. So very, very cool record. Not amazing, but pretty solid record. Definitely more of a listener than the previous two. And now we got into Let There Be Rock. Let There Be Rock, at least in my opinion, is the divider. So that's the borderline between the old AC/DC and the new AC/DC. It's not yet amazing, but here there is quite an improvement as far as the music going in, them playing seriously, writing better songs, playing better. The bass player here really came in. I think they switched. No, the bass player Cliff Williams came in the next record. But anyway, the songs, the sound hardened, the drummer and the guitars. This is when kind of the what we know as AC/DC today, with their tack sharp, razor sharp, always spot on, incredibly tight. It kind of started here. It didn't. It's not yet what is going to become. So you could say that you get the new AC/DC is everything that they did after Let There Be Rock and anything that they did before. It's only 3 albums, and then this is kind of on the balance in the middle, but it definitely gives you a good bird's eye view, or an idea, a taster of what's going to be. You got Dog Eat Dog, you got Overdose, A Rhapsody in Blue, Go Down, the opener, Let There Be Rock. All the songs are really, Whole Lotta Rosie. That's Whole Lotta Rosie is like a very well known and often played song. So pretty cool record. And this one was released in 77. Yes, 77. Now we go back to Kiss, and as we said before, a live one is what saved their financial well-being, or the financial situation, and that of their label. It saved the label. Now they're starting to make some serious money, and this is the first time that they record a studio album with the full support of the band and management and the label, and they come up with Destroyer, which is not bad at all, not disappointing. Again, a plenty of famous Kiss songs: Flaming Youth, Shout It Out, God of Thunder, Detroit Rock City, of course, kind of the title track, if you will, King of the Nighttime Word. So all the songs are kind of tougher, harder, and a little bit improved over the previous albums. I could consider this one the bona fide follow-up to Hotter Than Hell. Then of course you get Rock and Roll Over, and this is the record where, in my opinion, Kiss started to kind of run short on ideas. And that's a very, very interesting contrast between Kiss and AC/DC. Kiss, I don't know if they knew, or if they had a clear idea, or if they planned things a lot in advance, but here they started to be repetitive, but not in a very tasteful, or not, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's not repetitive in the sense that AC/DC is repetitive. AC/DC is repetitive, but it's not like you ever say, why did they release another album that sounds exactly like the previous one, which is, one of Angus Young's perennial jokes that he goes, I'm so pissed that people say that we have 16 albums that sounds exactly the same. We have 17, right? But in a way, there is some truth to it, but they really worked out of details of really how to make records that sound exactly the same on one hand, but on the other hand have kind of their own personality. And I think that Kiss kind of lacked that knack. I don't know if they didn't invest enough thought in it, but Rock and Roll Over is like, okay, we've seen this movie too. What else do you want? Thus said, they going a small step into the little more commercial direction, a little slicker tone, a little bit more sound manipulations and improvements. The drum sound comes a little bit big, which didn't really fit Peter that well. All in all, it's a pretty good record, like for fun and parties and things of that nature. Calling Dr. Love, I Want You, Hard Luck Woman, which Peter sang, Making Love. So, Ladies' Room, not a terrible record, not bad record, but again, this is not like the good creme de la creme of Kiss. And as you would imagine, the next record, Love Gone, went in the same direction. However, I want to say that to me this was an improvement. So they probably understood that the previous one was lacking a little bit balls and a little bit grit, and so in Love Gone I'm not going to say they fixed it, but they improved that tendency. So with Love Gone, they came out with another couple pretty well known. Well, any Kiss record includes a couple hits or a couple well known, but they have, of course, Love Gun, which is the big one off of the record. Shock Me, Christine 16, Tomorrow and Tonight is not bad. Got Love, Hooligan, Plaster Caster. So all in all, a very, very enjoyable, good, classic Kiss record from what we consider today to be the classic Kiss era. And of course, after another 3 studio records, they had to come up with another live record, which I must say was pretty close to a live one. So they came up with a live 2, kind of trying to replicate the success, and as far as I can tell, they pretty much did. The record sounds good live. It's a pretty good live recording. The sound is not bad, and I don't know how much they did in the studio, but again, the song choice is exactly what you would expect. A lot concentrating a lot on the 3 previous records, and just doing the more better known and bigger hits from the first 3. And of course, as you would expect, now we are going to fly back to Australia to Power and Rage. And that's exactly what this record is all about. Power and Rage. This is an excellent, excellent record. Definitely a candidate to be in the top AC/DC records. I almost said ZZ Top. I just don't have enough good things to say about it. When we first heard this record, it was just like, wow. This is the record that, at least in my opinion, made or revealed for the first time AC/DC to be the AC/DC that we know today. This tack sharp, razor sharp, super tight, everything together with all the simplicity, but it's just like so good. The songs are better, they're simple, they're straightforward as always, and you have, of course, Riff Raff, What Next to the Moon, Kicked in the Teeth, Give Me a Bullet, Rock and Roll Damnation, Riff Raff, Down Payment Blues, one after the other. Very, very good sound. I think this is the first one also that had the famous logo. So they brought on someone, some graphic designer who made it to them. I'm sorry, I hope you indulge me here in a little sip of Johnny Walker. We're talking Kiss and AC/DC after all, right? Can't keep dry and keep talking the whole time. And as difficult it is to believe, with the next release, they were able to top it. Oh, before that, now they released a live album, finally. Which is pretty normal. They had now, what are we talking, 4 or 5 studio records, so they had definitely enough material for a live album. Nothing super shocking. It's quite raw, so it sounds good. If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Came out right after Power Rage, featuring quite a number of songs of Power Rage, and of course, Whole Lotta Rosie. It's a pretty good live record, as you would expect from AC/DC. It's kind of not a huge difference with AC/DC between a live and a studio record. So their live performances are notorious and famous, but I don't think that their live records capture that all that good. It sounds a little bit more like kind of a compilation. But anyway, this brings us into Highway to Hell, another bombshell, an explosion of the record. Really super, super, super good. It's such a record that you can flip it over and listen to it again. Touch Too Much and Shut Down in Flames, and of course Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, the Night Prowler, one after the other. The bass player and the drummer are so good. The drum is like, it kicks hard and it has a good big hollow sound. And actually, one of the things that I love about AC/DC and Kiss, I really should have mentioned it during a Kiss record, but the bass in AC/DC is always kind of has this resounding, almost like a hollow sound, and it's pretty much centered kind of between those that just go with the drum and those that just go with the melody. So it's not really a bass melody line, but it's not just with the drum. It very often kind of goes and amplifies the guitar, and they do this throughout their whole career. And Kiss do something pretty similar. So Gene, in my opinion, does not get enough credit for being a bass player. Again, not like he's anything outrageous or unbelievable. He's not like a new Jacob Pistorius, but he also doesn't remain in the shade like most heavy metal bassists. So he keeps it pretty cool, and his way of playing is also very very rock solid, like really a very very solid bass player, and knows his place. So despite his personality and shooting off and sometimes making a fool out of himself or being an arrogant prick, when it comes to actually playing and making records, he kind of knows his place. And I'll actually want to mention something else regarding that, but more towards the end. Of course, as we all know, very sadly, with AC/DC, tragedy strikes. And in early 1980, Bon Scott dies. Of course, as you can imagine, there's all kinds of ideas and theories how it exactly happened. Suffice to say, he got good and drunk during a party, and for some reason he didn't go home, or one of his friends wanted to give him a ride, so he left him in the car, and he froze to death or choked on his own vomit or inhaled his own vomit, something like that. So pretty gruesome and sad death to a guy, but who lived it up and lived that kind of way. And miraculously, they found a singer who, at least in my opinion, is the perfect replacement. I think no one's gonna really argue with that. So the new singer Brian Johnson, in my opinion, replicates or picks up where Bon Scott stopped. I've heard many times that people say that Bon Scott's voice was better for the band. It was a raspier, more grueling kind of voice, more gurgly, less polished. Maybe to some extent, maybe Brian Johnson, but Brian Johnson also has that scream. And like I told you, I'm not always a big adherent of having everything vocal. So I think that Brian Johnson is either his equal or even maybe a little bit better. Definitely better suitable to the music that they made after Brian Johnson. Now, of course, what came first, the chicken or the egg? We may argue about that. I don't know. Maybe Johnson's voice prompted them to make a little polished sound. But from here, from Back in Black and on, they play with a little bit more modernized, a little bit more polished sound, which to me it works most of the time, but not all of the time, or not as well as you would expect it. Be it as it may, this is the record that made them like international, unbelievable, historic superstars. So Back in Black, they're Back in Black. They're Black as the Morning, of course, for Bon Scott, and Brian Johnson does a fine job here. The record is good. Like you would expect, the criticism against this record that it's a little bit too polished, but I don't think that they have any regrets given the amount of money and publicity and notoriety that this gave them. And they kept touring on the heels of this record for practically the entire decade. What else can we say? A good hard-hitting record that's a little bit too polished, but to me it carries on the legacy and is pretty much a very natural follow-up to Highway to Hell. The songs are becoming maybe even more lyrically outrageous than before, to those who pay attention to that. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, who might not know, their songs have one topic and one topic only. And that's not politics and not classical paintings. Let's just leave it at that. Given the dog a bone, you can imagine what it is. You Shook Me All Night Long, Hell's Bells, Back in Black, Shoot to Thrill, and so on. Rock and Roll Noise Pollution, maybe the best track of the record. But all in all, I think it's a very very good record. But I personally don't like it as much as Power Age and Highway to Hell. Let's go back to Kiss. And I think with Kiss, we're kind of in the second half of the 70s. Alive 2 came out in 76 or 7, and they took out most of the year touring. So there was a little bit of a breather there until their next studio album, which until that time came out banging one on tail of the other, sometimes even twice in the same year. And so they, of course, come up. Oh, before we go into the next studio record, they released here their first big collection, their compilation, which is double platinum, and that was among my first Kiss records, third or fourth Kiss record that I bought, and that kind of introduced me to their other records. This is a very very good compilation, and anyone who just wants to get to listen to Kiss once in a while or for nostalgic purposes, this is the one to get. Unless you want the live album. So if you want kind of the first phase of Kiss, the real famous big, the classic Kiss, if you want, then you want to go with the Live 1, double platinum, and the Live 2, and you will have all the Kiss you ever really need to listen to. I as a kid already started buying their records, so I kind of continued to go with them, even though from a musical perspective I already went on to the bands that I love much more later on. But it has all of their important songs. Of course, there's a remake of Strutter. It's called Strutter 78, and a lot of people curse it out that it's horrible and that it's by far not as good as the first one. I don't think it's really that significant. Of course, they made it cheesier and more commercial, but not terrible. What is terrible, or actually not terrible, but started a terrible period for the band, was the next studio record with Dynasty, the famous I Was Made for Loving You, and of course the Magic Touch, Save Your Love, 2000 Man, Sure Know Something. These are the records. Kind of had a very disco-y, very contemporary feel, very cheesy, very commercial feel to it, and there was an instant rebellion of the fans. So when I heard the record first, it didn't bother me that much. Actually, I do like some funk, and disco and funk are somewhat related. So I didn't hate it. I didn't say that this is a pile of vomit, but I wasn't so thrilled about it either. But this is, I mean, Kiss was always commercial. The sound was always commercial. They never hid it. They never tried to pretend that there's something else. So what's the big surprise? Yeah, they're trying to chase the fad and be fashionable and sell records, but that's what they always were from some perspective. But you also have the perspective that they always presented themselves as kind of this big, scary, hard rocking band, and of course that was true to an extent. So the early records, they weren't as overtly commercial, and it's certainly not as overtly chasing the fads and trying to be fashionable like this one. And to this day, there's a lot of fans that don't forgive them and that say that from this point on the band was over and this was crap. And unfortunately, instead of reversing course with the next record, Unmasked, they really made a mound of, oversweet honey mixed with cake icing and oversweetened over everything. So they didn't get the hint for the first time, I guess because of the commercial success. I don't know how much they sold of the Dynasty record, but the hit was definitely big, and as far as I know, the tour was also very successful. So I get they didn't get the memo. They didn't realize that, ding ding, there's an alarm bell ringing here. Unmasked, it's truly a horrible album. Like not as in like you put it on and you want to run out of the room. Maybe yes. They have a few songs that are kind of listenable, at least, looking back after 20 years. Shandy, Tomorrow wasn't that bad, Talk to Me. So there were a couple ones that had some decent parts in them. The best thing about this record is the front cover. There's a comic strip that shows Kiss, and they do a press conference. They say that they're gonna take the makeup off, and they remove the mask, and then they remove the mask, and under the mask is again the same makeup. Haha, big funny joke. Although pretty soon they were going to actually remove the makeup. And again, next up, they go into the studio and they make another mistake, maybe even bigger than Unmasked. I have a difficult time deciding which was the biggest stupidity, Unmasked or Music from the Elder. At least I would give Music from the Elder, at least I would give it the credit that they tried. At least they came up with an idea that it wasn't original, but it wanted to be original. And that's pretty much a similar problem to Judas Priest's Nostradamus. They kind of wanted to overjump or overstep their pay grade. If you're not Frank Zappa, if you're not King Crimson, don't try to come up with a King Crimson or a Zappa record. It's pretty simple. But again, people don't like to think of themselves in those terms. They don't want to think of themselves as a one-trick pony. You get tired of doing the same thing. You can't come up with something creative. So I get it. But they got entangled in themselves. They got this fancy producer, Bob Ezrin, who is, by the way, very good and doesn't just do commercial crap. He worked with a lot of bands. I think he worked with Pink Floyd, and he might have even worked with Peter Green, or maybe there was in the later days of Fleetwood Mac. But he did some serious work, maybe even with Rush, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember so well. But the guy is not just like you would say Keith Olsen or Bob Rock, or who was another one, Mike Stone, who have the reputation to be like super cheesy and formulaic commercial bands. So anyway, it's not a good record. I think the biggest problem of this record that is kind of half-baked or maybe over-baked, if you will. They could have come up with a simpler story and to make something nicer, but the whole thing, in my opinion, collapsed. The songs are kind of sort of listenable, The Oath, and maybe you can find a couple other, Doglight maybe, The Escape from the Island. I mean, a couple songs are okay in and of themselves, but the whole idea was not good. They mixed up the songs, so in the end, even the story didn't make sense. So it was one big fiasco, and the band was in pretty bad shape at this point in terms of being demoralized and not knowing what to do next. And of course, the financial part of it also hit them hard. Maybe not on a personal level, but again, once you get used to making millions, and all of a sudden you're not everybody's favorite child, it kind of hurts, and a lot of rock stars let it get to their heads. Speaking of which, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were sacked one after another. Actually, Ace was not really sacked. Ace was just so stoned out of his mind, and he had too much fight with the band. And I think that at a certain point, he thought that he was the big shot and the big owner or the manager of the band. A lot of people would take him at his word that he was the best musician in the band. There definitely is what to say about that. As a guitar player, I don't think Ace is so phenomenal. His soloing and his playing overall fit the band very, very well early on. So all of those records, they have a certain charm, they have a certain style and a certain personality, a lot thanks to Ace. But there is a good dose of circular logic here, circular reasoning. So in other words, in part, what made those guitar parts and the overall sound of the record so good and so well congealed with Ace is not just Ace, but the entire band. So he was there with them from the beginning, they wrote the songs together, they practiced for the songs together. So if you would have put, I think, many other guitar players instead of him, we would have gotten the same or a similar kind of charm and fit. But the fact of the matter is that he's a good musician. At the time, he was also a good guitar player and a good singer. And I think it got to his head. He probably thought, well, I'm superior to these guys, but they owned the copyrights, they owned the band. It was their band, and he was too stoned out of his mind, too drunk, and too drugged up. He wouldn't show up to rehearsal. He messed up a lot of stuff. Peter was outright sabotaging the band. He wouldn't help put stuff away. He would sabotage drum parts live on stage in front of big crowds. So that, of course, they kicked his ass out and they replaced him with one Eric Carr, who appeared for the first time on Creatures, same actually as Vinnie Vincent. Okay. So they left Ace on the credits only and the bare minimum to maintain. There was something with the record company that they had to retain. I think 3 original members or like this. For some reason, Ace had to stay on. So Paul and Gene made sure that he stays for the bare minimum requirement. They put him on the album sleeve, even though he didn't play. And I'm already talking about the next record, Creatures, which is a banger of a record. And the point I want to make that this is the Creatures and Lick It Up are the 2 biggest arguments against Ace being the be-all, end-all guitar player.